Thanks, Todd. And thank you to the Sesquicentennial Fund for sponsoring the trip for me. Yeah, it only cost me $3,300 to get here, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
We didn't sign off on it.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, always have a little humor. If you're going to be in aquaculture, you have to have a little humor because there's a lot of downsides. But at Cornell, the one thing, there was two groups. There was the aquaculture group, that was kind of me and my team, and there was the hydroponics team, that was Albright and Bob Langens and DeVilliers and Mattson. And the only thing we could really agree on was like, yeah, hydroponics makes sense, aquaculture kind of makes sense, but aquaponics, that's just a joke, okay? So that's what we agreed on for like 25 years, right? And in the aquaculture arena, you know, I kept hearing about, this aquaponics thing, like it's magical, you put the lettuce in, and 2 days later you got heads, and tomatoes are as big as watermelons, and it tastes great, it's really flavorful, it saves the world, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, but I kept hearing this, right? Hearing it. Yeah, but what's your evidence? What is your evidence that aquaponics works? Oh, wow, we did some, it was great. Was there any science behind this? And so basically about 4 years ago, we started actually trying to run replicated experiments to look at aquaponics versus hydroponics, and started focused mainly on lettuce, butterleaf, Landria. And then we recently finished up a bunch on spinach, because the Cornell people worked on spinach forever. And now we're just starting on strawberries. So that's kind of the background. And the long story short is like, well, I'm really surprised. Aquaponics actually does work. It's like, I was like one of the more shocked people, in the whole universe. Yeah, it really does work, and it's really kind of simple, So the other thing we could agree on was that aquaculture, and I say aquaculture, I'm really talking about recirculating aquaculture systems, or RAS. We'd say, yeah, RAS, that's kind of complicated. And the hydroponics people say, yeah, that's kind of complicated. And so the only thing we can agree on is that. And for sure, if you put two complicated systems together, it'll get even more complicated, right? So we agree on that, And so from an entrepreneurial standpoint, what do you want? You want to minimize risk. So if you put two risky systems together, you're getting even a more risky system. So this seems like a non-starter, right? That was kind of the context we came into it, and I've completely changed my view. Okay, completely changed. Okay, and again I was one of the main skeptics, and this does work. Okay, so moving on. A wise man once asked. I'll tell you a joke. This is a joke. A wise man once asked, "How do you make a small fortune in aquaculture?" Start with a large one. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Okay, this is actually a book that just came out by George Lockwood, and it's asking this question, like aquaculture has always been touted as, wow, this is going to be an industry of the future. It's going to change the world, blah, 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 blah. And it's never happened, right? It's never happened. At least in the United States, it's never happened, okay? But I put this slide as my brother was in the space program, so but there actually is some, this is pretty complicated, right? I mean, doing this is pretty complicated, right? So, and we've done that pretty much successfully. So, like, how hard could it be to raise fish in a tank? It just seems like it shouldn't be that hard, right? But it turns out it is kind of hard. But that's context. So, who am I, right? Why do I have any credibility at all? Well, academics, I make fun of them because I am an academic, but I had two hats on for a while, and we had at Cornell, it's a land grant institution, right? So there's research, extension, transfer to industry. Your goal is always to get our research-generated knowledge into application, and so we've actually done a couple technology transfers from the Cornell aquaculture program, the private industry, and they both failed miserably. Finally, I said, and it was always management. So finally, between my brother and myself, we raised enough money. Plus, I put my house. In with the bank, and we started Fingerlakes Aquaculture in the late 1997, actually. and it got to where it produced 1 million pounds per year for several years in the early 2000s. So I'd say it was pretty successful. It lasted for about 12 years and eventually shut down. Okay, so I did that, put my house on the line. It was a little bit stressful. In fact, my kids were still in high school at this point. We're sitting there eating dinner one night, and one of my three says to me, "Dad, are we going to lose our house?" I said, "No, Beth, we won't lose our house." I said, "Because in bankruptcy you get to keep it." So that was kind of a cruel thing, but yeah, it is a lot of risk. There's a lot of stress here. Okay, so here's some interesting stats on seafood. How many of you actually work in fisheries and seafood? We got David. Okay, so the rest of you may find these statistics fairly amazing, right? Seafood provides essential nutrition for over 1 billion people. 37% of the world fish production is traded internationally. Seafood is the most globally traded protein commodity by volume and value. The value of fish trade exceeds international trade, all the other animal proteins combined. 75% of the fisheries are considered fully overexploited. More than 50% of all fish supply comes from aquaculture. You'll see another slide on that shortly, and aquaculture is fastest growing, blah, blah. So any of those statistics surprise you? They should, right? Pretty amazing, isn't it? Seafood, right? The U.S., meanwhile, we import like over 90% of all our seafood. So that's why 90% of all the seafood we eat in the United States is imported. So people go, wow, there must be a huge economic opportunity here. And that's what George Lockwood's book is about, okay? So there's the statistics on this supply. So red is how much is coming from aquaculture compared to the total. And you can see this is about a little bit over 50% now. So 50% of all of our seafood for humans comes from aquaculture. When I started back over there, it was that was not a joke, right? It was about 5%. So from the mid-'80s to now, it's gone from like 5 to 50. Okay, so basically the wild supply keeps staying the same. Population keeps going up, and you keep hearing the numbers. We're 7 billion now, and we're going to be how many billion, right, in 2050? Where's that going to come from? Aquaculture. Okay. So what is the opportunity? You know, what does the consumer want, right? Well, this all leads to, you know, why does, so my theme too is, why does aquaponics have a role to play? Okay. Well, what does the consumer want? Well, they want something that they know the source. They think they want it only in season because that's when it's fresh. They want something with low environmental impact. They want something, everybody wants something that's pesticide-free, organic and safe, locally grown, and these people are willing to pay a premium, okay? So those are good things, right? So it lends itself to a farm that is what? Locally produced. If it's organic, it's even better. And my consumer, my customer is willing to pay more. Those are all good things, okay? These are the kind of people that, you know, are moving, you know, the organic product. You recognize these things: Green Star, Wegmans, Whole Foods, Fresh. So you're getting a premium on price, and this is also perceived as being healthier. These are all good things. Okay, so we have this opportunity. Question becomes, you know, can we put a business together that can take advantage of that? Further things going on. Okay, why does aquaponics make sense here? This is the characteristics of RAS or plus ponics, hydroponics. It's called aquaponics. So seafood, what's criteria in terms of something having a green label? You can have no impact on wild stock. Yeah, true, we have no impact. Impact on other species from your system. This is your production system. Yeah, with this, we have no impact. Is the fishery being managed to maintain long-term productivity? This is the whole driving principle of aquaponics. What about the effluent effects? We have no effect because we can control all the waste. Chemical use, generally not needed. Feed use, we can be as sustainable as, probably the most sustainable in all the major meat groups. Escapes, we have no escapes. And the source of stock, we're independent of wild stock. So all those things, you know, in the seafood world, we have all the attributes that are positive, right? So again, this is a good thing. Okay. Now, so what should I, so sustainability, so some striking numbers here, okay? What about feed conversion, okay? Feed conversion, you know, how much feed per pound of animal produced? Well, beef 3 to 1, pork 2.5 to 1, chicken 2 to 1, fish around 1 to 1. So we win here big time, right? Okay, in terms of converting one edible product, i.e. grains and low-value proteins, into something that can be consumed at a higher value level. So as income levels go up, you know, then the propensity to buy higher quality proteins goes up. So where do we want to be? And then there's the question of water usage. It's pretty striking. So chicken is 500 gallons per pound of product produced. So look at beef, sheep, and pork, 500, 1,800 for beef, sheep 1,200, pork 700, dairy 300, almost 400 gallons for cheese, 100 gallons for milk. Fish, okay, on a recirc system with minimal daily discharge, is what we ran at the Fingerlakes Aquaculture farm, only 6 gallons. So look, 6 compared to these things, right? Versus, say, 6,000 gallons in a conventional land-based aquaculture system. And, of course, it would be 0 in a net pen aquaculture system. In fact, when I was raising money, okay, to launch the Fingerlakes farm, I said, hey, I produce fish and I don't use water. And they go, oh, what do you mean you don't use water? I said, well, I use a little bit. And I give them some statistics like they go, well, you don't really use much water, do you? I said, no, I don't use any water. In fact, so like a little, so that Fingerlakes farm, just put in kind of, take a water hose, okay? That's how much water I use daily to produce 1 million pounds a year, okay? Not a lot. And I could shut it down further than that. Okay, lettuce, meanwhile, okay, only on a hydroponic, only 2 or 3 gallons of water per pound produced, and conventionally you're going to do something like 30 gallons. So you put these things together, and if you wanted a meat protein and some kind of vegetable, you know, how would you do it? Well, you would do it hydroponically, and you'd do fish, right? So that's from a sustainability perspective, that's definitely the direction you would go, okay? So there doesn't seem to be absolutely any argument about that, okay? So aquaculture, and since we only have like 10 minutes left, okay. So we'll be a short at aquaculture. It's been going on for a long, long time. The interesting thing is that in the Chinese culture and the Aztecs, as early as 1000 AD, they were already doing aquaponic type operations. It's pretty amazing. I'm reading a book, 1491. What was going on way back then was a very advanced science. So, okay, so skip that for a second. Okay, now, so where does this come from? Well, Dr. Berlinski's here, so he can reinforce all this. But you feed a fish, a whole bunch of stuff go in, but the darn fish doesn't really capture very much. Okay, and what it doesn't capture, goes eventually out into the water column, either dissolved, which is nice hydroponically, or it'll go out in the feces or the uneaten feed, which would be minimal. But then, so you get all these nutrients in here, and then the whole, 12 micronutrients or 30 or whatever, that's not even shown here, and those have to be mineralized. So that's one of the key steps in the aquaponics side. Somehow you got to mineralize this waste into dissolved nutrients. So that's a key design step that there are many ways to do that. But that's where this comes from. Okay, so from a sustainability standpoint, right? So if we're just raising fish, everything down here is wasted, versus in hydroponics we can design the plant side basically to capture all of that, right? So sustainability is a big selling point. To be as sustainable possible, let's capture those nutrients in a usable product instead of just throwing them away. So that's the logic behind that. So fish feed analysis, here's one we use on our koi, and just to give you an idea, so pretty much everything is there, okay? At least we think so. Or is it there? So how would you figure it out? Well, you'd set up an aquaponic system, You'd run it for a while, run some replicated experiments, and say, hey, what happened, right? That's what you would do, right? That's what a scientist would do, right? Well, that's what we did. Okay. So there's a quick picture of the aquaponics. I think everybody understands. Here's our fish. You're going to capture a bunch of solids. Here's our plants. Pump it. It just sits there and goes around in a circle. So the only water we're really using is the evapotranspiration here. Okay. And all the nutrients. You can design this to extract all the nutrients that are left behind by the plants. Okay. So yeah, let's forget that. So in hydroponics, we have 3 main types of systems. We got a water-based, floating type. These are, I call them ponds or deep water culture. And let me see. Let me go back one. So down here, this is a floating pond. So the water will be basically a foot deep. You put the plants into styrofoam rafts, and it's kind of nice because you can kind of float the rafts down through here and harvest, on a continual basis. These are semi-foolproof because they're just sitting on this big body of water. And then you're matching this body of water over to your fish system, wherever that is. The other kind of water-based culture is nutrient film technique, which are basically trough gutters. Water's trickled in at the beginning. Water flows through the trough. Plants, extract the nutrients in the flow-by basis. Then you have media-based cultures, usually for plants that need more structural root support, to hold the plant in a stable fashion. And then you have aeroponics and vertical gardens, which are kind of the part of the dream world out there, I guess you could probably say. Okay, so we have water quality standards between those two things. Hydroponics is very well defined in terms of the major cations and all the macro and micro elements you need. Aquaponics, we kind of have standards of where we need to be. But how does this all perform? So that one of the root, I like to use that word root. We're talking about roots, right? One of the root issues, right, is the nutrient availability of the macro and micro elements, right? And so I think this is like one of the key research areas because the contention is based upon pH and the dissociation of the molecule into ions, it's going to become more or less available as a function of pH. Okay, so probably no one disputes the dissociation curves, but the problem is like fish for the need to balance ammonia constraints and carbon dioxide constraints, you end up being neutral. Your fish systems tend to be right in here, and your plant systems tend to be in here, and so this causes a problem. Okay, at least in theory, it causes a problem. So what we did first was we ran lettuce experiments hydroponically, where we compared pH 7, where we knew our fish system was going to be, versus ideal conditions for lettuce, leafy greens. We ran 5.8 versus 7 hydroponically, low alkalinity. And we consistently got about a 25% reduction in productivity at the pH 7. Okay? Consistently. We're very meticulous here, and I had a really meticulous technician at that time. Kept doing this, kept getting this over and over and over. About a 25% reduction. And then we said, okay, now we've got our baselines established. Okay, let's put fish on it, right? So we had a koi system, been operating for about a year at that point, and we added the two together. My technician and graduate student name was Tyler Anderson, who did, as you know, grad students do most of the work, right? So we kind of watch, and criticize a lot. Did any students have that experience? You do all the work and just get criticized? Not at UNH. Wow, it's just at Cornell, right? Yeah, okay. Don't go to Cornell, right? So, except me, I'm just a very supportive kind of person. So this is just before harvest, so we're pretty much running a 35-day harvest. We had this beautiful lettuce. So what you're seeing is we had you can see the end here. So these are 400 liter troughs. We have 6 of them, so we ran 3 trials, 3 treatments, independent, blah, 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 right? So, and so here's what we found. So here's the hydroponic, the ideal conditions. This is ideal conditions except at pH 7. There's some precipitation occurring, and here's our aquaponic. Don't do anything except add chelated iron. So seriously, this is what you do nothing. You do nothing. It's like Seinfeld, right? It's all about nothing, right? Older people in the room get that, right? Seinfeld is a show about nothing, right? Yeah. Okay. So you do nothing with aquaponics, and there was no statistical difference between the fresh weight production versus we keep getting this drop, with the hydroponic 7 conditions consistently. It's pretty amazing, right? So you do nothing, you add chelated iron, boom, it's done. Then we did spinach, baby spinach. So the growing mechanism there is we try to do about a 15-day turnaround so that the Pythium disease, which is like 3 stages of life, doesn't allow itself to reproduce, so you harvest it before the life cycle completes itself. So baby spinach, you're harvesting the plant. There's about 3-gram plants at harvest. Okay, so we have room for 5 trays. There's 12 by 11, 121 plants in these things. We get rid of the 2 outside rows, harvest the interior. Gave us 42 plants interior. Ran that over and over and over, and there's a good shot. So see, it's Sorry. There it is. So you start them here every week. You put in a new tray, and so you got you have 6 or 7 days of incubation, and then you got 3 days. What was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15 days here, and then they're out. And the results were, that's my grad student, Dan Van Dam, and there was his results on average. This is on dry weight. There's the aquaponics, and we have the 2 hydro conditions, and the aqua's up here. There was no statistical difference between hydroponic 5.8 and aqua 7, and the hydro 7 has some issues here, but between the 2 ideal conditions, aqua and hydro 5.8, there was no difference. So, hey, well result. Summarizing, right, there's the, I think you covered that well. Aquaponics, hydroponics. It's amazingly, we're not seeing any negative impact, on the aquaponic condition of pH 7, to my surprise. Okay, then the next thing we started thinking about was, this relates more specific to aquaponics. What is one of the main problems in aquaculture RAS is the biofilter. Okay, and the biofilter one, it's capital intensive, i.e. you have to invest. Biofilters are notoriously hard to manage. The bigger problem, though, is there's this over 2 or 3 years is this slow degradation in overall productivity of the system, and we're talking like 20-25%. So I'm producing, 1 million pounds in year 1. By the end of year 3, we're producing maybe 700,000 pounds. And the epidemiologists and the fish vets and all that was involved in the research kind of conclude pretty strongly that it was the bacterial and the heterotrophic challenges that the fish are being subjected to from accumulation in the system. And a lot of that is the darn biofilters, okay? So if you can get rid of the biofilter problem, it's like, whoa, wouldn't this be a good thing? And you go, yeah, it would be a really good thing. And say, well, how are we going to replace the biofilter? So you go, wow, look at these roots, And there's the plant roots. These are in the water. You know, autotrophic bacteria, you know, the nitrifiers. We just need surface area. So, like, why don't we use the roots, you know, as the biofilter? And so you go, yeah, hey, that's a really good idea. So let's test that out. So why would that be so nice? Well, because that biofilter, you're always throwing it away, i.e. you're harvesting it all the time, right? And you're getting new roots. So this accumulation of bacterial challenge in the water column affecting the fish would go away. So like, whoa, that's a good thing, right? So we go, okay, so let's run some experiments and figure out how to do this. And so I'm an engineer, so I told Todd I got to have at least one equation. So here's my one equation. So it's somewhat tediously we quantified the surface area of the roots as a function of the wet weight of the plant. And so then we can say, okay, when the plant is this size, we have this much root area. And so when you have like a staggered production system, then you can say, okay, I have this much root area, you know, for the average size plant. And then you can say, okay, I get this much area. Then you can say, okay, then I can feed so much fish feed because I need so much area to assimilate the nitrogen that's produced, the ammonia produced by the fish from the feeding process. See, right? Right? So it's like, oh, that's really nice, right? So an equation would be something like, I don't know whether you can see that can you see this in the front row? Okay, that's the advantage of being in the front row. Okay, in the back row, you got really good ideas, but take-home message is something like this. Okay, let's take 100 kilograms of fish. Let's feed it 1% body weight per day. That's going to produce 30 grams of ammonia. Round numbers, we need about a square meter of surface area per gram of ammonia produced. And you work out all those numbers out, then you'll get a fish feed to lettuce ratio area, which turns out to be like 154 grams of fish feed per square meter plant area. And for those who don't work in this area, it means, well, we could probably actually feed a lot more than design recommendations are now, okay? But the ramifications, and David Berlinski will like this slide a lot. Okay, here's one of the main challenges. Okay, from the previous slide. Okay, we're talking about, you know, the economic comparison between what's generated from the fish and what's generated from the plants. Okay, so basically, you know, a little bit of fish produces an awful lot of plants, and it's something like this. If I had that 100 kilograms. You typically turn that over 2 or 3 times a year. So on a yearly basis, you know, we're going to produce, depending on how much you get for the product, somewhere between $1,200 and $1,800. But the lettuce, you know, 14 days nursery, 21 days grow, blah, 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 150 gram can, we're going to produce, and a dollar a head. On the lettuce, we'll produce about 4,000. So somewhere between a 1 to 4 ratio in terms of our economic output. Okay, so can you make that work? So maybe, right? But the thing is, you produce a lot more lettuce than you do fish, but maybe it's not as bad as we might think. And then, you know, you can look at producing more than just lettuce, right? What if you did tomatoes and cucumbers? So you have a variety of products to support the fish side. So it gives you a better, more rounded marketing opportunity. And at a small scale, small family farm, right, the more products you have, the more likely you'll be able to satisfy your vendor. So a vendor does not like, if you just have one product, you know, like a restaurant, they like to have one go-to person to buy all their product. So if you just have one thing, it's a hard sell. So if you could supply the majority of their vegetable needs, you'd have a much more likelihood to gain that customer. So it's a kind of a nuance to that whole thing. The other constraint is that 1 kilogram of feed produces about 30 grams of nitrogen, okay, and that produces enough nitrogen for 16,000 grams of wet lettuce, or, you know, basically right over 100 plants. So there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of lettuce produced. So that is your problem, that is your challenge, which leads us to our last question. This is me back in like 1998 with tilapia from the Fingerlakes. And Dr. Gordotz and my mentor is the little guy up in the corner. That's Dr. Ebeling, just to give him some recognition for all the help and devil's advocate that he has continually played over the years. So we're up to questions or discussion. Pretty much on time.